All right, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of Sistas in Crime with Shot and Toy. I am Toy, short for Latoya.
I am I am Shy, short for Shamia. I messed that up last week.
All right. So this week we're going to be discussing the case of Miss Susan Hendricks. This is another case out of the upstate of South Carolina, and I'm just going to start off with a little background information like we always do, and then we'll take it from there. Let's just jump right into it, okay?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Susan is from Liberty, South Carolina, which, if you're from the upstate or if you're from South Carolina, you know that's in Pickens County. Her father worked in the mill, and her mother was pretty much a stay at home mom. Now, there's not a whole lot to go off on Susan's upbringing other than um, allegedly her mom had some mental issues. So there was an instance when their home caught on fire, and Susan's mom unfortunately died in that fire. So because of that, Susan kind of had to take on the role of being a parental figure to her younger siblings, and she also had to help take care of her father at a very young age. If you talk to any family and friends, they all describe Susan very smart, very intelligent. Like, she went to college. She studied a couple things, but ended up earning her degrees in business, criminal justice, the arts, and she also got an associate's degree in machine tool technology. I think she studied nursing as well. She didn't get a degree in nursing, but she also studied nursing and psychology. So she ended up after college working as a machinist for General Electric, excuse me. And oftentimes they would travel out of the country for business. There was an instance when Susan would go to Finland. Like, she was flying out all over the world for business for General Electric, living her best life. So she ended up meeting a man by the name of Mark Hendricks. This is while she was working with General Electric. He was also a fellow machinist. And it was one of those situations where, they say opposites attract, because Susan was more reserved. She was quiet on the shy side. And then Mark was more so outgoing, goofy, funny, rambunctious. And what I thought was crazy is then within a few weeks of them meeting, they went and got married. So
Red
to
flag.
me, that's red flag number one, right?
Right. Red flag.
How much can you really know about a person in a few weeks?
Well, okay. So I've heard people say when you know, right?
Right. I hear that.
I hear that.
Right.
Don't recommend that because they also say, when you're marrying a person, you got to marry them several times in the future because they're going to change. So,
Right.
so just jumping in and like, are we just going to get married after? No. And then when they were talking about how quiet she was, I said, that's also a red flag because them are the ones you got to watch. Like,
But you know what though? I kind of resent that comment because I'm very quiet.
I mean, me too. I'm quiet or whatever, but I think I talk enough to where I'm not like a red flag.
Well, yeah, yeah. I'm not. I'm quiet, but I'm not that quiet to the point that people think I'm like something wrong or something like that.
Right. Right.
But I
Right.
definitely agree with that, and I think it's one of those situations like they say. You need to know people in all seasons before you make such a huge decision and huge jump to marry them and set up and build a life with them.
Yes. Yeah.
So after they got married, they immediately moved into a house on the property owned by Mark's parents, and then they just started popping out kids. So they had two boys. The first son, Matthew, was born in 1988. He was the oldest, and then they had a second son by the name of Marshall that was born 3 years later in 91. So the two boys were kind of spitting images of their parents. Matthew was more so like Susan. He was a little quiet, a little more reserved. And Marshall was more outgoing, more funny. but they both still, it. Matthew was like his mom in that way. He was on the quieter side, but he still could be goofy and funny and outgoing like his dad, when the time came for it.
Right.
So Susan was not like most moms. She's like, I'm not gonna be a stay-at-home mom. She is very much still a working mom. Her career ended up taking off. Like we said, she was described as very smart, very intelligent, but she began traveling a lot more, and it ended up putting a strain on the relationship between Susan and Mark. So of course, once that happens, the less you see somebody, the more you drift apart, and that's exactly what happened in this instance. So they ended up separating in 1988, and then the next year they finalized their divorce. And I'm sorry, they separated in 1998, and then the following year they ended up finalizing their divorce in 1999. So at that time, Susan moved back to Liberty and bought a house right next to her father and her stepmother because at this time her dad had remarried and she took the kids with her. Now, this kind of really devastated Mark for the
Mm-hmm.
simple fact that, reminds you, I said Susan was on the road all the time. She was traveling for her job at General Electric. So he was the primary caregiver. So he's of course feeling slighted because he's used to having his kids with him all the time, and now she took him away and they moved to Liberty, South Carolina, and that was just hard not only on Mark but also on the children, and rightfully so. I can imagine like that was just they just were uprooted and then put in a whole nother environment.
Right.
So naturally, what happens when children are their routine is disrupted, they start
Mm-hmm.
acting out.
Of course.
So Matthew and Marshall, they began struggling. They started because they were missing their dad. They began to act out, got into the wrong crowd. They started partying, drinking, and in the Snap episode said they were smoking pot. So I don't use that word. We don't say pot, but they was taking part of the devil's lettuce. Okay. And this was at a young age, mind you, they're teenagers at this time. They're like what, um, 11, 12, 13, like 13 and 11 maybe.
Yeah. If they were born in like 88 and 91, yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
so they're teenagers. So, unfortunately, Susan's father, I believe his name was Gordon Finley. Don't quote me on that. He ended up passing away.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, she lost her mom years ago. Now she's lost her dad. So at that point, Susan has a proposal. She reaches out to Mark and she's like, why don't you just move in to the trailer next to me? And that way we can keep the boys together. So it was very unorthodox, the arrangement they had, but the way Mark looked at it, he's doing whatever he has to do for the betterment of his kids, right?
Right.
So things kind of started to change. Like the relationship within the family was still kind of turbulent. But Matthew, the oldest, he did enroll in college by 2009, and his intention was to follow in his mom's footsteps and become a machinist. Now, Marshall was more so on the artist side of things. He wanted to be a tattoo artist. He has some art in Liberty, South Carolina that's posted up. I don't remember exactly where it is, but he was very passionate about art. So they were like two completely polar opposites. And now we're gonna actually get into the incident on October 14th, 2011.
Let me. So Miss Susan, like reading up on her, I was like, ma'am, like let's just start here. So looking at her mugshot, the eyes for me, y'all. If y'all
Deranged.
like, please go look at her mugshot. Is her name is Susan Hendricks, but make sure you type in Susan Hendricks South Carolina murderer, because reason being, like, there's like 3 Susan Hendricks that have committed like murders, like it. That's all I kept finding, like all 3 of them. But it's the Susan Hendricks in South Carolina. But her eyes creep me out. I said something is not right with that woman.
She's unhinged. She was given unhinged, not well, deranged. Just
Like, I mean, please, let's contact the Vatican and get an exorcism scheduled immediately. Like, this is spiritual. This
like
is
call my grandmother, the holy oil, please.
please, like, toss it on her. Because I said, oh my God, I said, oh, something like, and I said, maybe it's just a picture. And then I looked at other ones. I said, no, something's not right about that woman.
She's not well.
No.
So, the incident on October the 14th, they Susan and her family resided at 236 Pinedale. Let me just say that after her father died, Susan did take on the role of becoming a caregiver for her stepmother, Linda. Okay, so on this day, 911 gets a call from Susan's sister, Evelyn Burns, and this was right before about 6:30 a.m. So she calls 911. She's like, "Hey, my sister just called me and told me that my nephew shot himself." And so the police, they 911 dispatch gets the information they need from her. They put the information out to the police and the ambulances. And her sister Evelyn was on her way over to the residence as well. The deputy that arrived on the scene found Matthew in the bed with a single gunshot wound to the head. And then his step grandmother, which again, like I said, Susan was caring for her stepmother, Linda Burns. Linda was also found on the bed in a completely different room with 4 gunshot wounds. So when law enforcement arrived, they were like, the family and friends and neighbors and people in the area was like, you may want to check next door too. Of course, remind you they had an unorthodox living arrangement. Susan stayed in a trailer, and then Mark, her ex-husband, was right next to it. So unfortunately, when law enforcement entered that home, or not even entered the home, when they walked up on the porch, they found Marshall deceased on the porch with a sheet over him. And then as they entered the home, the father, Susan's ex-husband, Mark Hendricks, he was found with a single gunshot wound to the chest on the couch. So originally they were putting it out as a murder suicide because that's what Susan told them. She told them, they were going off the story that Matthew shot himself and then
Mm-hmm.
supposedly he had killed everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole time Susan told them that she was there and she did not hear any gunshot wounds. Now, when they arrived on the scene, she did appear to be traumatized, and rightfully so. She just literally lost everyone that she loved and everyone that mattered to her. Her father had since been deceased. Mom died years ago, so I imagine she feels alone. She has a sister, Linda Burns, there to console her. But she said she didn't hear anything, and I'm like, you gonna hear a gunshot go off
That close. Yes.
that close because you're
Yes.
in the same house. So it was Susan in Susan's house. It was Matthew and Linda and Susan. And then next door, we have Marshall and Mark.
Right.
So I may have given her the benefit of the doubt if she didn't hear the gunshots going off next door. But
I
how do
don't know.
you not hear gunshots? No, because Linda, remind you, Linda was shot 4 times. Matthew was shot once. How do you not hear 5 gunshots go off in your house?
Yes. Oh yeah.
And this, of course, is the question that police had, but she told them that she took a sleeping pill the night before. She was up to the wee hours in the morning and she took a sleeping pill, so she didn't hear anything. I've never really had to take a sleeping pill other than
Yeah.
like melatonin to help me
Mm-hmm.
sleep sometimes. Um, but I'm still very aware of what's going on in my house. Like I can hear things. So
Right.
real sketch, right? So
Absolutely.
she told them that when she did wake up, she started her normal routine, went in the kitchen to make a pot of coffee, and then she noticed a letter laying on the kitchen counter from Matthew. So after she picks up the letter, it's saying about how good of a mother she is and, how much he loves her, this, that, and the third. After she reads the letter, she notices blood on the floor.
Hmm.
So that's when she alleged, supposedly she called her sister, and from there, sister called 911 and the police came out.
Okay.
Now, to back that up, she said that Matthew had been talking about killing himself because he was depressed. He had recently turned 23, I think it was, and not enough people told him happy birthday. That just seems to me to be that's another red flag for me. Because what 23-year-old is mad that not enough people told him or her happy birthday? If you were maybe 5 or 6, maybe.
Yeah, like I see what you're saying, but I do feel like, let me watch my mouth, right?
Right.
Um, there are some very sensitive people in the world that may, if I could believe if there were, if he was already struggling with feeling like no one cares already, and then boom, you get to and then on top of the parental issue, the parents, going through their whole separation, if things were
Right.
just snowballing, and he just boom, we get to his birthday and we, oh, no one wished him happy birthday, I could see why that was just like, but I'm with you though, like that's a little bit
I
extreme.
mean, and I would say, yeah, it would be very upsetting, but to go to the extreme to kill 4 people, or excuse me, well, yeah, including himself, that was 4 people.
Right.
To go to
Right.
the extreme of killing 4 people, I don't know.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. But I get it, but I'm just saying, like, there are some like sensitive people in the world that will like magnify, like, it might not be a big issue to us. Like, I would be upset that no one wished me happy birthday, but I wouldn't be that upset. But you never know where people are at mentally. But I think in this case, it's safe to say that she was. I don't think no. I don't. I get what you're saying. Yeah.
Right. So at this point, Susan's still in the kitchen. I guess she follows the trail of blood to her son Matthew in the bed, like she following the trail of tears. But from there, um, I guess she's like, oh wow, like let me go check on my stepmama too. And then she finds Linda in the bed deceased. So of course, authorities, they trained in
Hmm.
processing crime scenes, and they like something just not adding up. Cause why you the only one left alive? Why is your whole family been, killed, and you're the only one left? So that was another red flag for them.
Yeah. Yep.
So
Rightfully so.
rightfully so, right? Like,
Hmm.
I mean, and I think that's a natural progression. If you are at a crime scene, there's one survivor, quite naturally you gonna look at them,
Like,
right?
why them? Yeah.
And like even when so okay, so law enforcement obtained a search warrant and they began processing the scene, right? So and what was so heartbreaking is that, remember I said Marshall was found on the porch, and it appeared that he was trying to get away.
Oh no.
But again, detectives are like, well, why does he have a sheet over him? Because if this and and that kind of, I guess that's why they went more into that belief of a murder suicide, because usually if someone covers up a body after they kill the person, like it's because they don't want to look at that person, they can't accept it, and that usually is only in cases where they're close to the person. So
Yeah.
they're like, okay, this probably happened by someone that Marshall knew, because a random person who's just gonna come in your house and just start shooting everybody. They're not gonna care. They're gonna do what they do and leave. But
Yes.
someone took the care to put a sheet over his body, and the authorities did, and it was there when they got there.
Yeah.
So when they went into the second house, it was rickety, like ricochet, bullet holes everywhere, right?
Mhm.
So they noticed that in Matthew's room, now, and I don't want to confuse you, we're going back to the first house, Susan's house. In Matthew's room, the gun was laying on the nightstand. The problem with that is the gun was laying on the nightstand opposite direction of where Matthew was laying. So if he's laying like this in the bed, the nightstand is back here, the gun was placed on the nightstand. And if it was a suicide, after Matthew shot himself in the head, how could he place the gun on the nightstand? So of course they asked Susan these questions. What was so strange is that she came out her mouth and said that they had just prayed together. No, you ain't brought the Lord into this. I mean, the Lord need to be in everything, but no, you did not.
He wasn't nowhere in that.
He would know God don't bless no mess, honey. So he told authorities, we had just prayed together because Matthew was having some
Mhm.
problems. He's having issues, and
Mhm.
he had been talking about suicide. So I just told I told Mark we need to pray. Sounded like a good Christian mother, right?
Mhm. Far from it. Far from it. Side eye.
Bombastic
Bombastic
side
side
eye,
eye.
criminally offensive side
Side
eye.
eye.
So when law enforcement asked Susan, the guns on the nightstand, like she said that she placed it there. And law enforcement, it's not the best thing because when something happens, the last thing you want to do is touch anything at a crime scene. But if it's your family, sometimes that may be a knee jerk reaction. So it wasn't too far fetched for them at the moment. They still like, side eyeing her, but it's like, okay, it's happened before in situations, right?
Yeah.
So still to be on the safe side, they conducted a gunshot residue test on Susan. Okay. So then at this point, since everybody's going off on murder suicide, they dig a little deeper into Matthew's mental state. And
Mhm.
they talked to Susan first. She says, "Oh, like I said, Matthew, he was just disappointed with life. He was intoxicated. He was high. He was drunk. He was this. He was that. Like he was just down and out, couldn't function." And they, the family just prayed for him because the family that prays together stays together. That's what they say.
Yeah.
But friends and family had a completely different view of Matthew. They said Matthew had went back to school to get his GED. He had a very positive outlook on life. He had even reached out to some guy to start working out at the gym, to join him at the gym. And police are like, okay, so that's strange because usually if someone is suicidal, they're not making long term plans,
Right. Right.
right? Because
Right.
you're about to end your life.
Yeah.
So
You lose all motivation at that point.
all motivation, like, so it's like,
Mhm.
okay, another red flag.
Mhm.
So then the detectives go to speak to Marshall's girlfriend, Kelsey. Just so happened, Kelsey was at the home with Marshall the
Mhm.
night before this all happened. They he went to get something to eat. And Kelsey said everything was completely fine between everyone. She said Marshall, and Matthew were all very jovial. They were wrestling, playing with one another. There was no indication that anything like this was going to happen, right?
That's the
So,
that's the scary part.
right.
Yeah.
So, Kelsey ended up, she didn't stay. She ended up leaving right before midnight. Now, remember well, I'm not going to say the crimes happened at 6:30 a.m. Law enforcement
Mhm.
was notified about 6:30 a.m. So Kelsey had left around midnight the night before. And she, her and her boyfriend Marshall, they had this routine. She used to always call him and wake him up for work about 4 a.m. Most girlfriends and wives do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, well, I'm gonna say girlfriends because it's wife you like we living together. Most girlfriends do that. Like I've done that before. That's a normal thing. So she called him to wake him up, and he didn't answer, and that wasn't like him, right? He didn't. I didn't hear anything about him missing work, being a lazy employee, anything like that. That was their routine. She called him every morning about 4 o'clock, and he would pick up and get ready for work. So at that point, um, now the detectives at this point, this is the next day. They ended up receiving the autopsy report back,
Mm-hmm.
and because of findings in the autopsy report, they changed it from murder suicide to homicide. So now they're like, okay, we got to interview Susan again because what they found in the autopsy report was that Matthew was left-handed. Pretty sure Matthew was left-handed, but he was shot in the right side of the head. So that's
Mm-hmm.
not natural because if you're committing suicide, then you're going to pick up the gun yourself. It's not natural if I'm left-handed for me to take my hand and go way back here and do this.
Right.
Additionally, remember I said they tested Susan's clothes for gunshot residue,
Mm-hmm.
and additionally, her clothes came back positive for gunshot residue. So they like, and it wasn't like, and I want y'all to understand, gunshot residue, it can get on your clothes just by happenstance by you being around someone who fired
But you
up,
have to be
you know,
very
fired,
close.
but you have to be very close. In addition
Very
to that,
close.
the amount of gunshot residue that they found her on her clothes, that's only indicative of someone who is actually holding a firearm themselves. Okay. So, of course, they interviewed Susan again. This time, she's blaming it on a suspected local drug dealer named Thomas. Oh, she told him they was all doing drugs, and Thomas used to come deliver, drugs to the house. Like, he was door dashing weed and stuff like that to the house for them. But detectives, again, are like, okay, this ain't making sense because
Mm-hmm.
why would a drug dealer who has like no emotional familial connection to anyone place a sheet over Marshall's body? And if that's why would he leave you alive to kill everyone else?
Mm-hmm.
So of course now they're zoning in on Susan. And even the friends and family began to suspect that she had something to do with it. What detectives didn't know at the moment was that allegedly Susan had been sexually abused as a child.
Yes.
Now, it doesn't say by who, doesn't say how long it happened, but I think it was judging by how it was presented by some family and friends in the Snap episode. If you want to watch that, that is season 23, episode 24. Judging by how it was presented, it happened for a prolonged period of time. And I don't know who knows this, but sometimes, and I think especially in females, in cases of sexual abuse, as when females are minors, a lot of times in order to escape their reality, they develop an alternate identity.
Right.
So Susan had a diagnosis as of dissociative identity disorder. If you're familiar with it, it used to be called multiple personality disorder. Now, she was on treatment and medication, but she still had behavior. See, she was pretty much, they described her as like, pretty much Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. You never knew which Susan you were going to get from one day to the next. Like,
Right.
one of the family members said that her son was over there one time and she had told all of them if they didn't get out the house, she was going to shoot them and then start to shoot at their feet. That is a very
Wait, so
outlandish
she
reaction.
literally started shooting at their
She
feet for
literally
real?
started shooting at their feet. Yes. So, and also Susan and her oldest son, Matthew, the one she blamed everything on, come to find out they had, like I said, the whole family kind of had a turbulent dynamic. But her and Matthew had a very strained relationship because I think Matthew kind of resented her for, trying to keep him away from his father and
Mm,
discouraging him to spend time with his dad. But one thing everybody said about those kids is they loved their daddy, and
yeah,
rightfully so because he was the one that really raised them. Because remember, mind you, Susan was on the road. She was going to film. She went to film for 6 months.
yeah,
That is a big chunk of time to be away from your children.
yes.
Okay, then
Especially during the age. It was like
right,
depending on what age, definitely, yeah.
those developmental ages when
Yeah.
it's very critical to have those parental influences. So they establish more so, of a connection with Mark than Susan. Now, obviously, they love their mom because at some point Matthew did write a letter, but even the letter was suspect because they ended up having what do you call it, like writing experts
Yes.
examine the letter, right?
Yep. Hmm.
And come to find out, they determined that the letter had not been written recently. The letter was written for Mother's Day, either that year or a few years prior. Mind you, Mother's Day always occurs in May. We're in the month of October.
October. Hmm.
Okay, so the math ain't math.
So I couldn't find the letter. I wanted to read the letter because I'm like, how did they pull a letter from Mother's Day and what did it contain exactly? Because the way I was reading, they were saying it was a suicide note.
Hmm.
But then if it was for Mother's Day, I was like, what all did it contain? Because I know it said talk about how much of a good mother she was and everything, but I was like, I would want to see that letter.
So, and I like they show a glimpse of it,
Okay.
but I wasn't, and I may go back and try to, like, if I put it on my phone, I may go back and try to screenshot it so I can zoom in and read it. They showed a
Yeah.
glimpse of it, and basically what he was saying, it wasn't so much the part about her being a great mom.
Hmm.
It's the part about him saying, I'll love you forever and stuff like that. So
Okay.
that's kind of like,
Like, what does that
I guess I
mean?
can see how
Yeah.
that could be viewed as a suicide note. Because when people write suicide letters, they do
They say
say stuff
things like
like
that. Right.
right, and but yeah, they determined that was not the case. That wasn't a suicide note. That was a letter he had written to her for Mother's Day. Okay. Not only that, of course, remember I told you they had a search warrant for the house. They find a big red binder, which is organized. This is not funny. They find a big red binder in the house, which is organized by person. And guess what's in the binder? Life insurance policy. Records of life insurance policies, honey. She was a beneficiary on every single person that was killed in this incident. She had a
Mm.
life insurance policy on all of them. And when detectives added it up, it equated to be about $750,000.
That ain't no little piece of money.
That is not a little piece of money. And it's also suspicious that, okay, so, and I may need to, because this part kind of puzzled me. Because remember, they started out saying how she's very successful. She's doing all
Yeah.
this General Electric and
Right.
this, that, and the third. So you think, she got a little coin.
Yeah.
But they were living check to check.
Yeah. File for
So,
bankruptcy.
yeah, she filed for bankruptcy, right? So, in 2008, so they were living check to check. And life insurance policies of that size cost a significant amount of money.
Yes.
So you're living check to check, but yet and still you're paying a few $100s a month on life insurance policies.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I don't
Mm.
know, Susan. I don't
What you
know
got going on?
what you got going on.
Correct.
So like I said, they were on a fixed income. Okay, so we got a fixed income. life
Mm-hmm.
insurance policies for 750K. That don't add up. The
Right.
letter, that was not a suicide note. We got gunshot residue on her. Now, and witness testimony that Matthew was turning his life around, and he had a very positive outlook on life and a very positive outlook on the future.
Her
So,
story also changed.
and her story changed as well.
Mm-hmm.
So she went from saying murder suicide to, oh, the friendly neighborhood drug dealer Thomas came and
Mm-hmm.
killed my whole family and left me alive. Like, girl,
Now,
well, you ain't that special.
right. Well, did they ever find Thomas? Like, is this a fictional character, or did they ever
That's the
find Thomas?
thing. Thomas don't even exist. There is no drug dealer in Liberty or Pickens County that law and that authorities could find by the name of Thomas.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, for educational purposes
Purpose
only.
only.
So at this point, they like, okay, we feel like we got enough to prosecute. They go put
Right.
Susan up at the Quality Inn in Easlet, y'all, because she had got a hotel. So it was about 9 days after the incident. So this would have been like on around the 23rd. So they go
Right.
and pick her up, bring her in, and what's also crazy, April of 2006, Susan had killed another man. His name was Doyle O'Brien Teague. He was 39, and she was never charged or never went to jail, never served a day because she claimed self-defense. She said that Mr. Teague had entered her trailer without permission, and she was protecting herself.
Mm-hmm.
So when this happened, like, they actually never went back and charged her for that crime. But
Mm-hmm.
I wonder now at this point, has the statute of limitations passed on that
Mm-hmm.
since it happened? And now, remind you, this is 2011, but it was 5 years apart. At the time, they were only focused on these four homicides. But I was like, I would have went back and reviewed that too.
Yeah. Just, I mean, because look at what's happening now, and it makes you want to go back in time and say, all right, well, this was self-defense,
Right,
but look at what where we're at right now with covering the case. Look at what all she's conspiracized now, because you can't tell me that this woman didn't plan all this. Obviously, let's just look at the life insurance policies alone.
right,
She's making sure she keeping up with them payments,
exactly.
like, when that money could be going to like bills and stuff. I mean, of course everybody need life insurance or whatever, but I'm saying, like, those are some pretty expensive policies to be trying to keep up with. Like, what are you doing? And then I would definitely, as an investigator, like, all right, well, let's explore everything at this point, because the math not math.
Right, right. But they didn't.
Mm.
They
I ain't
didn't.
surprised.
Surprise, surprise. South Carolina Police Department. But anyway, we don't.
Right.
That's the topic for her another day. We're not even going
Right.
to touch the surface of that.
Right.
So, boom, we going to trial. Take it to trial. Take it to trial. So, as my sister said, which, like, y'all, when she walked into that courthouse, she was looking so deranged and just.
Call the Vatican.
but
Call the
see,
Vatican.
I think that's very important. So what I want to note, first of all, she was charged with the four homicides, and she was also charged with 4 counts of possession of a weapon during a violent crime. So her defense had a mental health professional testify on her behalf, and they did bring up that she has dissociative identity disorder.
Mm-hmm.
So one of her personalities committed this crime. And what I want to note is that it is possible because um, with dissociative identity disorder, you have multiple personalities, right? These personalities do not present themselves at one time. So
Right.
she could be Susan one day, she could be Mary, then she could turn in, and they're not gender specific. So
Nope.
even though she's a cis female, she could be Susan, She could be Mary. She could be John. She could be Henry. She could be a child, like named she could be a child, whoever. But
Mhm.
it's not indicative of age or gender or
Mhm.
anything of the sort. And because they, like I said, they don't present themselves together, they don't communicate with one another either. So
Mhm.
Susan very well may not have been aware that she killed her whole family.
That's a scary part.
That is very scary
That's a
because
scary
it could have been Mary. But if Mary, her other personality, so if her brain triggers and taps into Mary, Mary's not talking to Susan saying, "Hey, we did this."
part.
So
Right.
the other personalities, it's like they all exist individually as individual separate entities within one person. So they don't know what the other person is doing from one day or one moment to the next.
Right. Let me tell. So like, I need to go back and search for this. If I'm wrong, please forgive me. But I think I have read this that many people with like the multiple personality disorders are mimicking individuals they've experienced in the past, which that means um, like if they had like a man who was like a raging abusive man, and with her being a female, it could she could like I mean I guess a part of the disorder, she's mimicking this person that was in her past, or
Right.
um even resorting back to a child.
Right. She
You
could be
know, it's
actually with the child. She could be mimicking herself as a child,
yeah,
going
right,
through the sexual abuse.
right,
Yeah.
right.
So that is very true because, and also like if she ever encountered a very nurturing person, she could mimic them. Because it's a way, it's a coping mechanism to
Mm-hmm.
help them be able to get out of that moment. So
Correct.
they develop these entities unconsciously in order to cope with what's going on at the moment because you can't really process why I'm a child and this person is taking advantage of me.
Right.
So the issue at the trial was whether she should enter a mental health facility or go to prison. Now, personally, me, I'm an advocate for mental health. Psychology, and being that she did have a documented illness of dissociative identity disorder, and there's record, even the family and friends knew she was in treatment and took medication. Like that's no, that's not allegedly. So I feel as though a better course of action would have been to lock her away in a mental health facility so that she can get some help.
Yeah.
But that's not what happened. So her defense ended up entering a guilty plea, but a plea of guilty but insane. And the judge sentenced her to life without the possibility of parole. So she has 4 life sentences for each of these individuals that she unfortunately took the lives of. And to this day, she is at the Camille Graham Correctional Center in Columbia, South Carolina, serving her 4 life sentences. Now, what I would be interested in seeing is, since the judge, placed her basically in a Gen Pop regular prison, I'm interested in seeing, are they providing her with those mental health services?
Hmm.
Because if you're going to put her in prison, okay, fine, but she still has an illness that needs to be treated.
I feel what you're saying, but my opinion, these are my opinions. I feel like no, because the mental health infrastructure in America is trash. Like people are not getting the therapy they need, medication they need. Resources are very hard to get in some areas, and I just don't think that in the prison system, and correct, I mean, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. This is my opinion. Of course, that's something we could probably, I don't know if it's something we can look up or something like that, but I just feel like, let me just say it this way, if she isn't, I wouldn't be surprised. But if she is,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
But with the infrastructure the way it is in America right now, I'm I can probably stand on. No, she's probably not.
Because everybody getting the bare minimum resources, like all these agencies, all these federally and state funded institutions, like
Yeah.
they really don't have the money and the resources to provide the actual help that these inmates need. Because at
Right.
the end of the day, yes, she needs to be locked away somewhere. I'm not gonna hold you on that, but
Right.
they are still people, y'all. Like she still has a serious condition, and my concern would be if she repeats this, because even though she's in prison, we all know, you can get hold of contraband and all kind of stuff in prison. That's not gonna stop anything if this condition is going untreated. Now, I
Right.
haven't heard. I didn't when I was doing my research. I didn't see any incidents or like her just wilding out in prison like Susan Smith would.
Mhm.
So I haven't seen our hot girl, but I haven't seen any indication that she's been a problematic, inmate. But I guess I probably should dig a little deeper and see if I can find something on that, because she
Mhm.
definitely needs some help.
Let me tell you another interesting part. Let's go back to when she filed for bankruptcy because I
Okay.
was reading she filed for bankruptcy. Okay, don't quote me on this. I can't remember if she filed for bankruptcy and then
Allegedly.
her allegedly. I can't remember if she fell. I mean, she filed for bankruptcy and then her father passed, or her father passed, then she filed for bankruptcy afterwards. But either way, she inherited a nice little chunk. It was like $65,000 allegedly from her father passing his life insurance, and then she got like a benefit from like another insurance company that he had that was probably like another 30,000 or so.
So why was she living check to check?
Well, that's what, because she went to bankruptcy court for this, and the the
So it
judge
ain't
was,
adding up.
it's not adding up, right? But it was kind of funny because when I was reading, the judge was basically like, "Okay, you got this money, but why you didn't tell your trustee? Why you didn't tell the trustees about it? Because she's going through bankruptcy, and she could have used that money to start, fixing, going through that
Her
whole thing.
debts
But
and stuff.
all of
So
that, and they were
she
like,
just wanted all that money to herself and didn't want to pay no debts.
she took the money and was out.
You know what? I can't even say that I blame her because
Listen, okay, I would,
I know I
I
would send some of it. I probably would have paid majority.
would
I
listen,
had to send
but
some of it.
you ever got a big lump sum? You be thinking,
Yes, it's real exciting, and it's like, well, for me, if I get a huge lump sum, I just gotta let it marinate in my account for a little,
like, okay, what we gonna do with it?
and then I come up with a game plan. First, now,
Right,
now I'm
right,
joking, y'all, because one thing about if I do this, I'm gonna take care of home first, take care
yep,
of my bills first,
of
and then
course,
whatever I have left over, I'm gonna take care of me.
of course.
So, but that's just I didn't see that part, so that's really interesting because I was going to
Mhm.
give her the benefit of the doubt and say,
Mm-mm.
well, you know, but since I didn't know she had got a payout after
She got
her
to pay. I
dad
was like,
died.
deuce. She didn't
My
leave or
nerves
anything.
took off, but I'm like, girl,
Yeah,
you traveling to Finland and stuff like that. That costs money, so I know
yeah,
that's probably company paid, but she
right,
still probably had to have like a little money for incidentals or something, or
right,
because a lot of times the way it works, now if the company got it like that, I'm not sure about General Electric, not familiar with them. If the company got it like that, they may give you a stipend, but if not, sometimes you have to use your own money up front, and then when you get back, complete a reimbursement. Either
right.
way, if they sending you out the country,
Yep.
you making good money. Like you
Yeah.
may be in the six-figure range.
Yeah. You're doing okay for yourself.
You're doing really well because my job ain't sending me out the country. Now they sending me within the state because I'm in Columbia right now. That's why y'all see me in this hotel. They send me within the state, but they ain't sent me out the country. Okay, now we gonna keep hope alive. They may one day, who knows? But
Look,
like I do,
possibilities are endless.
they are, but you gotta manifest it. But
Yeah.
I'm just really like, it just seems like she had a big job, a big title for her to be
Hmm.
sent to Finland, which is in Europe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know
I,
exactly where, because I was gonna say Germany, and I just know that's wrong. I know it's in Europe, but anyway, y'all, you got anything to add, sis?
like, I when I was reading on the case, of course I wasn't really hung up. See, that's the thing when we're doing cases, I gotta be careful of getting hung up on stuff because see,
Yeah,
I'll get hung up on it and spend hours on that one thing,
yeah,
right?
that one thing.
Right. So I think for me, I was just disgusted because I said, um, when I found out like how she laid the sheet over her son, that lets me know she probably was watching him take his last breath and just couldn't, like, because that's like you said, that's why they do it, like so they don't have to look at the last. And of course that's her son, and you think how could she do this to him, like, you're supposed to love your child and everything, but it's like I think she did love him. That's why she did that. Unfortunately, I mean,
In
that's
her
I know that
own messed up way.
in her own messed up way, and I say that hesitantly because it's like, look at what she did, to her
Yeah,
kids who, and I mean, in my opinion, like kids, everybody has that rebellious phase,
yeah,
like where you don't follow the rules, you push boundaries and stuff. That's a part of life,
right,
but for you to just want to end their lives over some money that you didn't even get to have anyway,
right.
you
Because
know?
that's the clause in like life insurance policies. Like if you kill somebody, you won't get this money or whatever. But I
Right.
also, what I forgot to mention is they said another motive for these killings was that she felt like she was losing her family because, like I said, Matthew, he was moving on with his life, trying to turn things around, going to college and stuff like that. So I'm pretty sure he was about to move away, and Marshall was moving in with his girlfriend Kelsey. So I
Hmm.
think all of those things combined together kind of sent her over the edge. And like I said, the boys were just closer with their father than they were their mother. So I'm also interested if you know her father passing away really exacerbated this, or
Hmm.
that really was the last like person she was close to.
Hmm.
And then other than her children, and then when they are saying, we about to move and do stuff too, we're moving on with their lives, rightfully so. They're in their early 20s. Like, you want your kids to find some footing, for some footing, set up a foundation, not necessarily putting them out, but
Hmm.
ideally you want to give them support in order to be able to stand on their own 2 feet. And that's what they were trying to do. They were trying to find their footing and, become self functioning adults.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, just reading that case and looking at her, I was like, you just really, like, a lot of the cases we read through, it's like a lot of the center of it most of the time is mental illness. And I want America to put that at the forefront. Imagine, I mean, nothing can be like perfect, and I mean, it has to be like they're going to be. It can't be perfect and peaches and cream all the time. But I'm saying a lot of these issues going on in the world, like what we're talking about today, is mental health. Like, people need help.
Yeah.
And I'm not excusing her what she did, because obviously, yes, she has a mental illness, but she planned this out for you to
Mhm.
not only know what you're going to say to the cops and plan it. I mean, even going back as far as pulling a letter your son wrote you for Mother's Day, to, like, you had this planned out, ma'am.
Yeah.
You had it planned out. So yes, she's where she needs to be and everything, but America really needs to start focusing on like mental health and.
I highly agree. I highly agree because with technology, more things come about. We're able to diagnose more illnesses and recognize different things than we were before. So it is a huge problem in America right now because just simply don't have the resources.
Yeah.
Just don't. So.
But like, I listen. I hurried up and got off that website looking at her pictures
Cray, cray, cray.
because
Cause
I
her
was like,
eyes, cause to me, her eyes look black. And you know what? Before we go, I'm gonna add this
uh huh,
because don't quote me on this. Allegedly, I feel that with dissociative identity disorder, there is a dominant personality.
hmm,
So I think that once that dominant personality does something to this extreme, it kind of takes over the other personalities. So I'm wondering if, she was in that dominant personality state of mind when this came about. And then because the dominant personality, like I said, these personalities do not communicate with each other. So that dominant personality could have been setting all this up, and Susan herself didn't know what a thing. And then it just stayed there because when they walked in the courthouse, like, her eyes looked just black and soulless. And they said she
hmm,
didn't even say a lot during the course of the trial. I
hmm,
mean, I don't even think she showed remorse. Like, on the scene, she appeared hysterical, but I think that was theatrics. But
right,
again, just goes back to mental illness, mental health. We are
hmm,
in dire need of more resources, more ways to treat these illnesses so that people can have a better quality of life. Because
right,
that ain't it. She went plumb fool.
yeah. So I once again, I never really realized how many cases in South Carolina we have that are like this. Like, this was my first time hearing about her, and I was like, I mean, granted, many of the cases we talk about, we're really young, so
Hmm.
yeah, our parents didn't let us hear about any of that stuff. Um, but like, it's so many in South Carolina. But of course, we're not just going to be covering South Carolina cases. We're going to be covering other cases or whatever, because
Right.
we've already planned out weeks and weeks and weeks of cases and stuff. So we got
And we
some good
got them
stuff
rolling
coming.
now. We're going to be pumping them out for y'all.
Right. So, of course, last week we covered Frederick,
Ready?
Dusty.
Ready?
Um, so next week, of course, so we upload our episodes every Thursday around 1 or so. So go on our YouTube channel. Please let us know if you like the visuals where you see us versus like the recordings that we do. We got a lot of feedback, and a lot of people were like, no, we need to see y'all, and do that. So, and I admit I do like this.
I do
Uh,
too. I love
like,
it.
this way better. But please don't forget to, our emails are always linked in the each video, so you can let us know feedback, what you want to see next, or if there are any cases, or if you have any questions, or I mean anything, please let us know.
Just reach out, y'all. We just a little chat away. All right, we got it. You got anything else to add, sis?
I don't. Peace and blessings. I just want to say, if y'all ever are going through anything, please get therapy.
Yeah.
Like, go talk to
And don't be
somebody.
ashamed. Don't be
Don't
ashamed.
be ashamed. Everybody has their moments where they just like don't know what to do. And, I mean, the cases we talk about are extreme, but I'm saying, like, go get some help, go talk
Yeah.
to people, find
And
ways to
I
take
would
care of
say, even if
yourself.
you don't have anything going on, it still don't hurt to talk to a therapist because you want to be proactive instead of reactive.
Hmm.
So it's always good. Just we all need that extra push, that outside opinion, that outside voice every now and then. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm an
Hmm.
advocate for therapy. I know that's like a taboo in the black community. It's taboo among a lot of communities, but y'all get help.
And most importantly, just because you're going to a therapist does not mean anything is wrong with you. There was
Right.
nothing wrong with you.
I'm so glad you said that because people do tend to think, oh, you going to a therapist, what's wrong with you? That's usually the first thing they'll say, what's wrong with you? Or,
Yes.
some people just feel more comfortable going to their pastor and stuff like that. But okay, it's one thing to go to a pastor, it's one thing to go to a licensed professional who has
Yeah.
went to school and gotten training on this, because all we tell each other is to pray about it. Prayer is good. Do not get me wrong. Love
Right.
God. I pray consistently. I stay in my Bible, okay? Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
However, it doesn't hurt. God gives us the tools and the resources. Don't hurt to use them.
Right. Absolutely. Well, y'all, that concludes
Amen.
another episode.
I'm silly, but I'll take you to church in a minute. All right, y'all. Go ahead and wrap us up, Shaka.
All right, y'all. So that concludes another episode of Sisters in Crime with Shy and Toy. I'm Shy.
Boy.
All right. So y'all join us back here on our YouTube next Thursday at 1 p.m. For our next episode. Remember, please send us suggestions. Even if it's something like a case or anything you want to see us do or talk about, please, or even constructive criticism. Be nice though.
Yeah, because I don't want to have to pop you. Because I can
No,
take constructive criticism, but don't just
right.
just be
We
mean with
don't disrespect though. We don't
because
take disrespect though.
I don't. All right.
All right. Bye y'all.
Bye.